Okay, team, as promised, we're going to delve into data security. We're going to start out with the overview and break this down into bite-sized pieces. So remember from our previous discussion, here's our user, and we talked about how the profile controls what you can see and the role controls what you can do. And there's also other factors that go into data security. So let's just take a look here. Let's start here in the introduction. Choosing the data set each user or group of users can see is one of the key decisions that affect the security of your Salesforce org or app. Once you've designed and implemented your data model, give some thought to the kinds of things your users are doing and the data they need to do it. Let's say you're building a recruiting app to help manage open positions, candidates, and job applications. You'll have to store confidential data such as social security numbers, salary amounts, and applicant reviews that only some types of users should see. You'll want to secure this sensitive data without making life harder for recruiters, hiring managers, and interviewers. With the Salesforce platform's flexibility, layered sharing models, it's easy to assign different data sets to different sets of users. You can balance security and convenience, reduce the risk of stolen or misused data, and still make sure all users can easily get the data they need. The platform makes it easy to specify which users can view, create, edit, or delete any record from the Field app. You can control access to your whole org, a specific object, a specific field, or even individual record. By combining security controls at different levels, you can provide just the right level of data to thousands of users without having to specify permissions for each user individually. Levels of data access. Now, before we get into that, when they said, let's say you're building a recruiting app, and here are the requirements. As we stated, unless you're dealing with a brand new organization, lots of this information, lots of these parameters will already be set for you. Your job will be to maintain that data. So if you get a brand new hire that comes aboard, your job as the Salesforce administrator is to ensure that new person, Pippi Longstocking, your job is to make sure she gets the correct profile and she gets the correct role. All right, so let's talk about different levels of access. So above, they talked about your access can be at the organization level, the object level, field level, and you may have certain access to different records also. Organization. For your whole org, you can maintain a list of authorized users, set password policies, and limit logins to certain hours and locations. Objects. Access to object level data is the simplest thing you can control. By setting permissions on a particular type of object, you can prevent a group of users from creating, viewing, editing, or deleting any records of that object. For example, you can use those object permissions to ensure that interviewers can use positions in job applications but not edit them. So let's just pause right there. Let's take a look at our user Pippi Longstocking. So the um, she has this particular profile. When you dive into a user's profile, here's when we talk about everything that you can see. So over here, right now, we're talking about object level security. So if you see here, object settings. So that means anyone with this particular profile, this is their object settings by object. And of course, objects are the different things that we can view in Salesforce, from our contacts, our opportunities, our prospects, and so on and so forth. Let's use opportunity, because this is something you will have just about at every organization. Opportunities or sales opportunities. So if you can see here, remember they talked about over here, you can read, create, edit. What you can read, create, or edit. Here's where you can see what this particular profile can read, create, or edit at the opportunity level. And you're also able to change that. Just keep in mind, changing that changes for everyone with that particular profile. Okay, and then also over here, they talked about organizational level information. So company information, for example. At this level is where you can control what your users also have access to. Or you can see, I'm sorry, at a high level what is going on. Okay. All right, so let's talk about fields and records. You can restrict access to certain fields even if a user has access to an object. For example, you can make the salary field in the position object invisible to interviewers, but visible to hiring managers. So let's take a look at an example of how you can control fields. So in setup, let's use opportunity as our object again. So if you're going to an object and you have certain fields on the object, let's say, all right, let's use this copy of title field as an example. So this field has already been created, and you have this section here that says set field level security. So for example, you want certain people to see this field and others do not. See here you have options. You can make it visible, which will make it also read only unless you deselect it. If you make something read only, of course, it's going to be visible. So as you can see, these first 6 profiles, they can see this particular field. If you take a look at this profile, they can see it, but it's only read only. So whereas these people can see it and edit it, these people can only see it and it's only in read only fashion. Okay. All right, so that's field level security and records. You can allow particular users to view an object, but then restrict an individual object records they're allowed to see. For example, an interviewer can see and edit their own notes, but not the reviews of the other interviewers. You can manage record level access in 4 ways. The first one that jumps out is by role. Remember we talked about roles, having a role or playing a position in what we can do. So we talked about Pippi Longstocking and her role. And it says she can view all contacts associated with accounts that she owns, regardless of who owns the contacts. And for opportunity, they can use this role, they can edit any opportunities associated with any accounts, regardless of who owns the opportunities. Okay, so here for role hierarchies, give access to users in the hierarchy to records owned by users below them in the hierarchy. Role hierarchies do not match your organization's chart exactly. Instead, each role in the hierarchy should represent a level of data access that a user or group of user needs. Again, coming into an established organization, they'll already have these lined up for you. Your role is to make sure that the right users get the right roles. And if one day they say, hey, Venus, we've changed our policy for Arizona new truck sales managers, which is the name of this role. We've changed our mind. We actually don't want them to be able to view all contacts. So let's just pretend here. So they say, okay, now they can view them. We want them to not be able to view them. Okay, so that's when you would change their access from view all to cannot access. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, organization-wide defaults. So a little bit earlier we were talking about organization here. Organization-wide defaults is something that you want the entire organization to have. So regardless of their role or their profile, you want to make sure that anyone in the organization has a certain level of access. Here's where you set that. Organization-wide defaults. So we can find some examples. There we go. So if you type in sharing settings in the setup search bar, it will give you your sharing for all objects, or you can narrow it down to specific objects. But it will tell you what your level of privacy is. So in this organization for the lead object, it's public, which means anyone can see it, they can edit it, they can create one, so on and so forth. For contacts, it's a little bit different if you notice. The setting is private. So if I have a contact under my name and Pippi has a contact under her name, we cannot see each other's, as an organization, we cannot see each other's contacts. That's what that means. All right, so we talked about organization-wide defaults and role hierarchies. Sharing rules are automatic exceptions to organizational defaults for particular groups of users so they can get to records they don't own or can't normally see. Sharing roles, like role hierarchies, are only used to give additional users access to records. They can't be stricter than your organizational rules. So what we talked about here as an organization, contacts are private. You may say that's fine for 99.9% of the organization, but it's a small team of people. I want them to be the exception to this rule. So I know this is our organizational wide rule, but for a certain group of people, I want this to be public, but I don't want to change it for the entire organization. I only want that for a small set of people. That is a sharing rule. And in this data security module, you will get more into sharing rules. That's the last subject here. But that just lets you know if you want to have an organizational wide rule, but you want to make an exception for a small group, you can make sharing rules. And then lastly, manual sharing allows owners of particular records to share them with others. Although manual sharing isn't automated like org-wide sharing settings, role hierarchies, or sharing rules, it can be useful in some situations, such as when a recruiter is going on vacation and needs temporarily assign ownership of the job application to someone else. Normally in these type of exceptions where it's not, the security is not defined by organizational wide default, a role hierarchy, or a sharing rule, normally you would get your, as a sales rep, you get your administrator involved and just say, hey, the owner of this particular record is on vacation. Can you give me access to them? But depending on how the organization is set up, I, as the recruiter who has gone on vacation, I may be able to assign my records to you so that you can see them. Because if you're, for example, if there's a privacy setting, and as stated here for contacts, if there's a privacy setting, the only way that you be able to see that outside of a sharing rule is if I personally put the record in your name. And that would be doing it manually, but there's specific permissions even then have to be determined by the administrator. Again, unless you're going into a brand new organization that just recently got Salesforce, this may not be an issue, but again, your job is to maintain the security. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, I need to make sure that this group of people no longer can see these particular types of fields or objects, then you'll know what to do to make those edits. Okay, this is, let's take a look at this. Controlling data with Salesforce platform. What objects can a user see? That's object level security. What fields on those objects can the user see? That's field level security. Which records should be hidden by default? So on the record level, as we looked over here, we have different privacy settings. That's what they're referring to here, record level security. And what exceptions should be made? And that's when we get into the role hierarchies, the sharing rules, and the manual sharing. So they basically took everything here and just kind of put it into brackets for you to think of. This is a hard chart when you're coming out in your learning. I would suggest this chart for post learning because as you're building, this can be very confusing, or it may make perfect sense. But I would use this as a post tool to remember everything you've learned. Okay, audit system. Auditing provides important information for diagnosing potential security issues and dealing with real ones. Someone in your organization should audit regularly to detect potential abuse. Look for unexpected changes or patterns. I would disagree with this. I've been in multiple organizations where there was not a need to regularly run research. Now, there may be a situation where something was changed and you want to proactively look, but as far as just on a mundane basis, checking if records were not audited by the right people, I have yet to come across that. But you do need to know what to do if you're looking for exceptions. Record modification fields. All objects includes fields to store the name of the user who created the record and who has last modified the record. This provides basic auditing information. So what that means is if I go into Salesforce and I create a contact, this is super basic. All right, this is not a good spot for it, but let's go ahead and create one now. Let's call it an account. This particular sandbox, I don't think it has, it doesn't. Let's try a different sandbox. That one has much more records. All right. So we're just going to pick any random record. It could be an opportunity, contact, account, doesn't really matter. All right, so let's say I created this contact. What this is referencing here, so when it talks about record modification fields and it talks about telling you who created it and the last time it was modified, this is what we're referring to here. So this is a contact record that was created. And if you want to know who created it and the last time it was modified, you can go to the system information section to see who created it and the last time it was modified. Login history, you can review a list of successful and failed login attempts for the last 6 months. So if we use our Pippi loan stocking, as a matter of fact, we can probably use me. Let's use me. You go to my user record and you wanted to know, well, when is the last time Venus logged in? You would go to my user record and scroll down to the bottom for my login history. So if someone said, hey, I am logging into Salesforce and I am taking a look at everything, you can see here the last time they logged in, if they were successful, and where they logged in from. Okay. All right, so that's the login history. Field history tracking. You can turn on an auditing and automatically track changes and values of fields. Although field level auditing is available for all custom objects, only some standard objects allow it. So if you wanted to know if specific fields on an object change, who changed them and when, let's see, an opportunity. We'll use an opportunity as an example. If you have turned on that field tracking history, here in this section, opportunity field history. So let's see, I'm going to update these. I think these are in our tracking. You can specify what fields you want to actually track. Let's see here. Awesome. So see here now you have a value and opportunity field history. So if you said, man, who updated the total sales amount on this opportunity, or who updated the gross profit on this opportunity, you would be able to see, oh, well, let's click on it. You'll be able to see when it was changed, what field was changed, who changed it, what was the original value, and what was the new value. So that is what they're talking about when they say field history tracking. And last but not least, set up Audit Trail. Set up audit trail logs when modifications are made to your organization's configuration. So if you have multiple admins or you have managers who have high level access and you want to know what changes were made across the board throughout Salesforce, this Audit Trail can actually help you do that. Again, this is mostly on a need basis. So someone may come to you and say, hey, I want to know who made XYZ changes in the last 24 hours. Then you can come to your Audit Trail to do that, and you'll learn more about how to do that in the future. Right now, we just want you to know the high level overview of data security. So basically what that means is making sure that the right people have the right access, making sure you have the right access set for everyone at the opportunity level, the record level, the field level. Also, we want to be able to audit things. You want to know who created what. You may want to know when someone's logged in and if they were successful. You want to know what fields on a particular record was changed and what overall changes to the entire organizations were made. Let's take our quiz. You can configure access to data at all of the following levels except, I'm going to say page layouts. Which of these is not a method for controlling record level data? Not a level for controlling record level access. Record level access. I want to say profiles. I think that's a trick question. Let's see. Oh, we got it. Awesome. So feel free to move ahead of me and go to the next section. Like I said, this data security is a very big module, but it's a very important module. And to be honest with you, as a Salesforce administrator, once you understand the general concept, it's one of the easiest things that you can do and one of the biggest things that you can put on your resume to say that you have these skills in data security. Because if someone's going to hire you, they really want to know and make sure that you're able to give their data the type of security that it needs. So I think this is a great start. Right now, the next section is control access to the org. So you can continue with this and move on to these other steps also. But I like to give context in what you're reading. Best of luck, everyone. Talk to you soon.